Welcome to the Femme Fatal, a true crime podcast with an astrology twist. I'm your host, Stacey Dotson. Each week, I'll be joined by a guest host because this Femme Fatale prefers not to work alone. Hi, welcome back to the Femme Fatal. Today, I'm going to be joined again by my husband, Greg.
Hello.
And he wants to talk about Karla Faye Tucker, the Pickaxe killer.
And again, I'm trying to keep it local, H-Town,
Yeah.
You always hear keep Austin weird.
Yes.
If you go digging around, you can find out Houston's just as weird. So Karla Faye Tucker was pretty notorious. She was a female killer. She got notoriety not for just the crime itself, but she found God in prison, and it got a lot of international and national attention. I'll go into the details on that here in a little bit. But as I dug into the story, outside of the fact that it's a very gruesome crime and there's some interesting history, the story involves a Ford Ranchero and an El Camino and an Allman Brothers Band reference.
Oh,
so yeah,
okay.
So it's going to be, I think it'll be good. So Karla Faye Tucker, she was born on November 18th, 1959, and she was sentenced to death for killing two people with a pickaxe that occurred during a burglary. Interestingly, she was the first woman to be executed in the United States since someone named Velma Barfield was executed in 1984.
That's a long time. Civil War, right?
No, 1984. There's two references. Velma Barfield was the last woman killed in the United States in 1984.
Okay.
But Karla Faye was the first one killed in Texas since the Civil War.
Okay, first one in Texas since the Civil War.
Yeah.
I knew something about the Civil War.
Yeah, someone named Chapito Rodriguez was executed in 1863. And then Karla spent 14 years on death row, and she was executed in February of 1998. And so I guess 1984, woman was killed in North Carolina. No other women were killed through capital punishment in America until Karla Faye was in 1998. But no women had received capital punishment in Texas since 1863. She had a pretty widely publicized conversion to Christianity. And when she became a Christian, she inspired an unusually large national and international movement. And they were all advocating for the commutation of her sentence to life without parole. And then like celebrities and politicians and foreign government officials actually joined in on that.
Okay.
She was born and raised in Houston. She was the youngest of three sisters. And her father, Larry, was a longshoreman. Her parents had a troubled marriage. Apparently, Karla started smoking cigarettes with her sisters when she was 8 years old. Parents got divorced, and during the divorce proceedings, she learned that her birth was a result of an extramarital affair.
So her dad wasn't her dad?
No, and she found out about that when she was 10.
Oh, wow.
So by age 12, she'd begun taking drugs and having sex. She dropped out of school at age 14 and followed her mother, Carolyn, a rock groupie, into prostitution and began traveling with the Allman Brothers Band.
She started, Karla Faye toured or traveled with the Allman
With her
Brothers?
mom.
Or her mom was the groupie?
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah. So she dropped out of school and then followed her mom into prostitution. At 16, she was briefly married to a handyman named Stephen Griffith. Then she began hanging out with bikers and met a woman named Shawn Dean. And later on, Shawn Dean married Jerry Dean, and no one really knows what Shawn's maiden name was. The couple introduced her in 1981 to a man named Daniel Ryan Garrett, or Danny. Okay, so this is going to kind of lead into the crime now.
Okay.
So after spending the weekend using drugs with Garrett and his friends, Tucker and Garrett entered Jerry Dean's apartment around 3 a.m. on Monday, June 13th, 1983. And they were going in there to steal a motorcycle. So they went in there to steal a motorcycle that Dean was restoring. Someone named James Liebrant, L-I-E-B-R-A-N-D-T. Liebrant reported that he went looking for Dean's El Camino. There's the El Camino reference. While Tucker and Garrett entered the apartment with a set of keys that Tucker claimed Shawn Dean had lost and Tucker had found.
Okay, so you're saying these are recounts when the police interviewed them after the crime?
Yes.
Okay.
During the burglary, Tucker and Garrett entered Dean's bedroom, where apparently Tucker sat on Dean in an effort to protect himself. Dean grabbed Tucker above the elbows, and whereupon Garrett then intervened and struck Dean numerous times in the back of the head with a ball-peen hammer they found on the floor. After hitting Dean, Guerin left the room to carry motorcycle parts out of the apartment. And then Tucker remained in the bedroom. The blows Garrett had dealt Dean caused him to begin making a gurgling kind of sound. When the went to court and all that, Karla Faye said that she wanted him to stop making that noise. And that's when she picked up the pickaxe and began hitting Dean. And at that point, Garrett then re-entered the room and dealt Dean a final blow in the chest.
Do you think that happened to be, and she was super strung out, right? They were all drugged up. Was that a case of misophonia? Do you know? Do not know what misophonia is. So misophonia is a condition where specific sounds can drive you crazy and trigger intense negative emotional and physical reactions. And it's also known as like selective sound sensitivity syndrome. And people with misophonia experience extreme irritation, rage, or panic, akin to a fight or flight response. Part of me, when I heard that gurgling she kept saying was making her crazy, I was like, that must be misophonia.
It sounds like it, whether you just described it, right? I mean, she couldn't deal with the sound and grabbed a pickaxe and started driving into the dude's chest until Garrett could come in and finish it off and everything. I mean, I didn't see anything in my research that said that she had like a history of this over and over and over again. Like as a child, she had misophonia with this particular sound.
Right. I mean, but, you know, she was strung out. So violent tendencies can happen. And then that was a trigger.
You know, I could see how certain sounds can trigger people to, you know, lose their minds.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the drugs and alcohol probably had a lot to do with it this
the drugs
night.
and alcohol probably the big factor there.
All right. So after pickaxing Dean, Garrett left the bedroom and continued loading motorcycle parts into his Ford Ranchero. So there you are. Allman Brothers, Ford Ranchero, and an El Camino, all in the same story. All right, so Tucker was left alone in the room and noticed a woman had been hidden under the bed covers against the wall. And this particular woman was Deborah Ruth Thornton. Apparently, she had had an argument with her husband the day before, went to a party, and ended up spending the night in Dean's bed. Upon discovering Thornton, Tucker grazed her shoulder with the pickaxe. They began to struggle. Garrett came back again, separated them, and then Tucker proceeded to hit Thornton repeatedly with the pickaxe until she embedded the axe into her heart. During the court proceedings, it came out that Tucker experienced multiple intense orgasms with each blow of the pickaxe.
Wow. Who said that?
Tucker.
She admits that.
Yeah. She said she got off on it.
Wow. Okay.
But this Garrett guy, you know, he's hauls out motorcycle parts, comes in, kills a dude, hauls out motorcycle parts, comes back in, helps kill another person. And then this poor girl, you know, I mean,
she's just
decisions have consequences. I'm not judging, but you know, she made a bad decision here and ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Worst decision of her life, obviously. Yeah.
After an argument. That's sad, right? You know, you think you'd come back from an argument.
Well, we don't know.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know the details.
No,
right?
we don't. And it doesn't, and there's not a whole lot on that part of the story that I could find either. But it's just, I just feel bad for her. The next morning, one of Dean's coworkers who had been waiting for a ride entered the apartment and discovered the victims' bodies. And then the police investigation ultimately led to the arrest of Tucker and Garrett about 5 weeks after the killings happened. And in September of 1983, Tucker and Garrett were indicted for murder, but they were tried separately for their crimes. So Tucker was charged with the murders of both Dean and Thornton, but she testified against Garrett during the trial, right? And so the charge for the murder of Thornton was dropped.
So they were both charged with murder.
You know, Tucker was charged with the murders of both Dean and Thornton, but she testified against Garrett, so the murder charge against Thornton was dropped. And remember in the TV movie, that was the husband that came to the reporter's house?
Right.
And, you know, was testifying in Huntsville and all that. So it was his wife that the charge was dropped against.
Okay, so she only was charged for the guy, Dean, right?
Yeah. Garrett was not charged with Thornton's death either. Tucker entered a plea of not guilty and was jailed awaiting trial soon after being imprisoned. So soon after being imprisoned, she took a Bible from the prison's ministry program and read it in her cell, and was later quoted as recalling that, "I didn't know what I was reading before I knew it. I was in the middle of my cell floor on my knees. I was just asking God to forgive me." She officially became a Christian in October of 1983. Later got married by proxy to her prison minister, Reverend Dana Lane Brown, in 1995, and had her Christian wedding ceremony inside the prison. Remember, they had her preacher was on one side of the wall and she was on the other one. They like touched hands like Kirk and Spock did when the reactor was melting down on the Enterprise.
God. So no one got charged for the woman? And what happened to him? Like, what did he get? Did he get the death penalty?
No, he died from liver disease in 1993, waiting for execution. Yeah, he got the death penalty.
Oh, he did get the death penalty. Okay. I feel like a lot of people find God in prison. You know
Sure
what I
they
mean?
do.
And I don't know. Obviously, there's pastors there that are, you know, praying with them, I guess. I guess he was just around all the time and they met and they fell in love.
Yeah, I mean, he was the prison minister, and I'm sure, she found God by reading the Bible, and I'm
Yeah.
sure they had many conversations, spent times praying together, did Bible class together, and a relationship flourished out of it.
Yeah.
They got married late, though. I mean, she was in prison in 1983, and they got married in 1995.
And then she was executed in 98.
98.
Okay.
Yeah, so the ceremony was held in the prison. Even though the death penalty, I guess there's a history of there's hardly ever being sought for female killers, Tucker, along with Garrett, they were both sentenced to death in late 1984. Garrett died of liver disease, however, in 1993 while on death row. Karla Faye shared her death row cell at the Mountain View unit with someone named Pam Perillo. Pam's own sentence was eventually commuted.
So she was on death row as well, right? Do they mix death row prisoners with regular prisoners?
Apparently they shared a cell together at the beginning of it. Between 84 and 92, there were multiple requests for a retrial and appeals, but they were all denied. But on June 22nd, this is in 92, Tucker requested that her life be spared on the basis that she was under the influence of drugs at the time of the murders. She made the argument that she was now reformed, and if she had not taken the drugs, the murders would have never been committed. And so this is where a lot of the national attention starts to come in, right?
Okay.
And she's like, that was a different person. It was a lifetime ago. If I hadn't taken the drugs and been in the circumstances I was in, it would have never happened. I found God. I'm a reformed person.
So how is this information getting out? Like media, like people are coming to interview her? Were appeals being filed?
Yeah. Appeals, multiple appeals, and, motions for a retrial were filed between 1984 and 1992. And because of the notoriety of the murder, I'm sure every time she brought it up, I'm sure it made the news, especially locally.
Right.
And so...
I remember, vaguely, I was young and not really paying attention to stuff like that, but I do remember it being on the news here.
So her pleas drew support from abroad and also from some leaders of American conservatives. Among those who appealed to the state of Texas on her behalf was somebody named Bakre Wali Ndiaye, Ndiaye Ndiaye. This person was the United Nations Commissioner on Summary and Arbitrary Executions. The World Council of Churches asked for her to be spared. Pope John Paul II
asked for her to be spared?
Weighed in on it. Yep.
Wow.
Italian Prime Minister Romano Prodi. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Newt Gingrich, came in on it. Pat Robertson, of course, being televangelist. Ronald Carlson, the brother of Tucker's murder victim, Debbie Thornton, also came out and said she's a reformed person. And
the brother
of Debbie Thornton lobbied for Karla Faye.
I feel bad. It seems like Thornton doesn't have any justice.
Her own family's saying like her killer is like, she's reformed. It's okay. We forgive her.
But it's not like they're going to let her out of prison. They just think she should get off death row.
Yeah, that would be my guess here. The warden at the Huntsville prison where she was testified that she was a model prisoner and that after 14 years on death row, she likely had been reformed. However, the board rejected her appeal on January 28th, 1998. Hours before the execution, Texas Governor George W. Bush refused the final 11th hour appeal to block her execution. On a side note, apparently the governor of Texas cannot stay the execution of a prisoner. They can only approve the recommendation of the parole board, and that is rarely ever given. The parole board, is probably not going to overrule the court. Capital cases apparently cannot be freed from prison, but can be commuted to life imprisonment. So that's,
that's
she
probably
can't
what
get
they
out.
were going
they're trying
for.
to save her life. She was never getting out of prison. But
right.
Interestingly enough, while she was incarcerated at the Mountain View unit in Gatesville, Texas, she became the Texas Department of Criminal Justice death row inmate number 777.
Wow.
Another little godly thing that's come in on all this. On February 3rd, 98, the authorities took Tucker from Gatesville and flew her to Huntsville. And for her last meal, she requested a banana, a peach, and a garden salad with ranch dressing.
That was her last meal.
That was her final meal. She selected 4 people to watch her die.
Okay.
Her sister, Carrie Weeks, or maybe Kari, K-A-R-I. Her husband, Dana Brown, the minister, right? Close friends, Jackie Onken and Ronald Carlson. At one time, Carlson had supported the execution of his sister's murderer, but after a religious conversion, he also decided that he was now opposed to all executions. The witness for the murder victims included Thornton's husband, Richard, Thornton's only child, William Joseph Davis, and Thornton's stepdaughter, Katie. Tucker's execution was also witnessed by the members of the TDCJ, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
Okay, I was like...
Warden Baggett, and various representatives of the media. So these were her final words. Yes, sir, I'd like to say to all of you, the Thornton family and Jerry Dean's family, that I am so sorry. I hope God will give you peace with this. Then she looked at her husband. Baby, I love you. Then she looks at Ronald Carlson. Ron, give Peggy a hug for me. And she looked at all present, weeping and smiling. Everybody has been so good to me. I love all of you very much. I'm going to be face to face with Jesus now. Warden Baggett, thank all of you so much. You have been so good to me. I love all of you very much. I'll see you all when you get there. I will wait for you.
I mean, she made peace with what she did, even if, she doesn't feel like she was in her right mind. But she made those choices and put the drugs in her body herself, too.
She was executed by lethal injection on February 3rd, 1998. According to witnesses, as the chemicals were being administered, she praised Jesus Christ, licked her lips, looked up at the ceiling, and hummed. She was pronounced dead at 6:45 p.m. Houston time, 8 minutes after receiving the injection. And she's buried at Forest Park, Lawndale Cemetery in Houston. And that's kind of her story there. I think it's interesting, especially with everything that's going on in the media right now. There's people that, if you follow the teachings of Jesus, and I don't, I wasn't brought up that way or anything, but, you read about the teachings of Jesus, and it makes it sound like Jesus would probably be anti-capital punishment.
I would agree.
Maybe Karla Faye did reform, and that Thornton's brother, obviously reformed, is willing to forgive his sister's killer.
The husband didn't, though.
No, husband did not. Those people, I think they really did believe. And I think they really were trying to follow, Jesus' example.
I do not believe in capital punishment at all. Obviously, I can see someone taking someone I love and being enraged, and I understand that emotion, but I was raised Catholic. So it's like, I always think about how thou shalt not kill, right? It's a commandment, and it's the same. They shouldn't kill, but then, so we turn around and we kill. That's still killing. And the people that administer I always think about like their souls. They're the ones doing the lethal injection. And that's just something that I can't wrap my head around my emotions about it. I just know that I don't think it should be done.
It's probably in the top 5 in the categories of crappiest jobs in the world. Death row executioners probably
would
be in the top 5.
I know, but I mean, I don't think they can be religious. It's like, because
right? I mean,
you would believe that your actions reflect in your next life. And even though you're not doing it out of bad intention, it's your job.
You're still doing it.
You're still doing it.
It's a debate that will go on forever and ever and ever. And
right.
It's here. Capital punishment has been around, I think, the mid-70s in the U.S.
From a federal level.
Probably around the state levels longer than that. I'm not sure, but it's not going away.
Yeah, it does take a very, very long time. They're not swift. Capital punishment is not swift justice. What did you say? She was on death row for
14 years.
14 years? Okay. Well, anyway, let's jump into, and I don't even like using the term pop culture because this is a very sad story. But, I'm just talking more about what's out there media-wise, and it shows up in a different way. We watched that movie together.
Yes,
I always make you watch these movies with me. It's called Crossed Over, and Jennifer Jason Leigh plays Karla Faye Tucker. And it's got Diane Keaton in it as an author. That the story is very much about Diane Keaton's life. And then she went to meet Karla Faye Tucker sort of befriended her.
Yeah, I mean, her son got ran over by, we think, a drunk driver.
Yeah.
She kind of loses it and becomes obsessed with death. And I think in the movie they said she wanted to like get to know somebody that knew death, right?
Yeah.
So that's why she went up to start communicating with Karla Faye. And like you said, it became a friendship.
It didn't really focus on the crime. It had a couple flashback type scenes, but it did talk a lot of her life and her growing up, being a prostitute that young. And just, I mean, I always like feel like they just never have a chance. Some of these people, you know?
I think most of them do, as a loving and devoted husband and listening to your podcast every time they come out. There's a common theme. Epilepsy.
Yes,
and,
it's epilepsy.
And the fact that these people just never had a shot from the very beginning.
Yeah, you grow up hard, you know, you ride hard, and then bad decisions all around. Anyway, so that movie, we watched it on Amazon, I believe. And then there's also a little lesser known film called Karla Faye Tucker, and it is more about the religious conversion. It focuses more on her finding God and Jesus. But there's also a couple songs, one by the Indigo Girls, Faye Tucker, written in 1999. And so that was the year after she was executed, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to read you a couple lyrics. You may be reborn, but it's all just for scorn. Well, the minister wants you to live now, and the governor wants you to fry. It's an interesting folky song. Then there's another song called Karla Faye by Mary Gauthier. And I just realized it's kind of like the couple songs that I found are all folky type, female forward and folky. The one by Mary Gauthier is very much about her spirituality and how there's no compassion now, that she was a lost girl and now she's a lost girl again. Let's go to the astrology part. Before we get into her chart, I want to address Pluto, because I'm going to talk about it quite a bit. And even though Pluto was reclassified as a dwarf planet in astronomy, in astrology, it's still incredibly important. And Pluto represents power, transformation, destruction, and rebirth. The cycles of tearing something down and rebuilding it into something new. Unlike the faster moving planets, Pluto works on a deep psychological level. It's not about day-to-day personality. It's about the bigger shifts that define a life. So even if science changed its label, astrologically, Pluto is still doing the same job. And in this case, it matters a lot. So Karla Faye Tucker was born on November 18th, 1959, which makes her a Scorpio sun. The sun sign is your basic overall personality. Scorpio sun is most associated with extremes, destruction and rebirth, and very intense emotional experiences. And Scorpio energy doesn't really do anything halfway. They tend to go all in, whether it's into chaos or transformation. And so early on in Karla Faye's life, you see the more chaotic, destructive side with the drug use and the instability and then the violence.
Just a little bit of chaotic when you swing a pickaxe into somebody.
And that's when obviously the Scorpio is like ungrounded, its shadow qualities. But later in life, you see something very different. Now, Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, okay? And Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth.
Well,
yeah. So
that makes sense, because she, was a harbinger of death.
Yes.
Found Jesus and is reborn, right? So interesting.
So obviously not literal death, but the idea of completely shedding one identity and becoming something else. And that's exactly what people associate with Karla Faye Tucker, like her transformation. So her religious conversion while on death row became a defining part of her story. And whether people believe it was genuine or not.
Do you think it was genuine?
I don't know. I guess, yes, with her, it was a long time and she was uneducated. I don't think you said this, but didn't she have only
out of school at age 12?
Yeah, like 7th grade education or something, right? Mm-hmm. And so coming to terms with what she did, she had some kind of spiritual change. And so I believe that she did change. If she had been able to go on with her life, she would have made better decisions and probably do charitable stuff. Don't you think so?
Well, I mean, I think charitable things in the prison, she was never getting out.
Right. But I'm just saying, if she had a different chance.
Joined the chaplaincy or helped mentor other troubled souls, or probably done some good inside that prison if they had not executed her.
It's one of those things we talked about where I mentioned earlier. It's like, I feel like a lot of people find Jesus. So I don't think everybody in prison really has this spiritual awakening.
True.
Anyway.
It's an interesting debate point, right? I mean, some people use religion and spirituality for personal gain, and some people actually truly experience it and are better people for it. And they work to make their friends, their neighbors, their community, their country, their city, their whatever, better.
And I would imagine some people in prison that say they've found God or Jesus, that's something they want to put in their appeal.
I get that argument. The heinousness of the crime, right? I mean, if you've been knocking over liquor stores and you're in jail for the third time and, you're lost and you have a good rapport with the chaplain there and you start studying the Bible and you become a believer and you eventually get out after certain your time and, you go to work at the church or you go do something beneficial to your community. You see that story happen quite a bit.
Yeah.
A little bit different when you're drug-fueled, high, pickaxing people, riding around in El Caminos, all kinds of craziness, right?
You and your cars.
I mean, not to make light of it, which I just did. But,
no, I mean,
but that's a different animal. Can somebody that's capable of doing that truly repent? I guess they can, but I guess ultimately is like, can they be saved, right?
Can they be saved?
We don't know. No one will ever know.
I mean, yeah.
No one will ever know, right? So
she had two lives. She had the life of growing up hard, drugs, prostitution, and then the murder. And then she had a whole nother life. 14 years, she was incarcerated, found Jesus, got married. Like, that's two lives.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting story. And like you said, we'll never know. Was she truly saved? But it sounds like she was really accepted her fate. And we don't know if she's going to be forgiven, but we do know that she was asking for it and was sincere.
I think she was probably sincere with it.
I find it really interesting. I want to know more about the Pope weighing in. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty illustrious list of names that was on that there. But then the governor was like, nah.
Yeah. He wasn't going to let it happen.
He didn't let it happen. And again, like I said, apparently they can't overturn. The parole board can recommend. And if the parole board is like, no, we're going through with this, then I don't think the governor can overturn it. Cannot stay the execution of a prisoner. They can only approve the recommendation of the parole board. So if the parole board had to have come back and said, hey, based on all of what we have here, right, we don't think then she needs to be executed at this point.
You always see in like movies and stuff where they're like chasing down the clock, trying to like get the stay of execution, right?
Yep.
So you're saying it can't just be the governor's decision. They're appealing to the parole board and then the governor can say yes or no.
According to where I was pulling this stuff, I was just pulling this stuff off online, right? I came across this and said that the governor cannot stay the execution of a prisoner. They can only, approve what the parole board recommends. And the parole board very rarely ever goes against the judgment of the court.
Yeah. I always thought the governor had the ultimate power just to say, hey, take a beat and figure this out.
If you're on the parole board and it was a DUI and someone got killed.
Right.
Which doesn't make it any less tragic. And you are a model prisoner and you find Jesus and you work with a chaplain and then you have advocates like Bill Gates or, Elon or something like that. It's like someone with the power and influence,
let's leave everybody on the Epstein list off of this.
Right. Probably not the best choices there, but influential people in government and social media, perhaps, right?
Yeah.
I think that person has a higher chance of maybe having the parole board change their mind.
Yes.
Get them off death row versus the pickaxe person.
I mean, I don't think people, if it's a drunk driving accident, I don't think they ever get death row.
I know that's just a bad example, but
right.
You're usually on death row because you killed somebody.
Yes. Well, thanks for joining me again.
No, I enjoyed it. It was good talking, and hopefully people will find this interesting.
Yes.
It'd be cool to maybe come back and, at a future date, not by me, but if anyone's listening to this and they do want to dive deeper into the spirituality and, and how she found religion in prison, that might be an interesting topic.
There's a link on the podcast where you can contact me. And if you have any information or if we said anything incorrect, I encourage people to shoot me that email and let me know.
Thanks for having me on, babe.
Love you, babe. Bye. So Greg and I have a good friend, Amy, who happened to work in the criminal justice system at the time that all this Karla Faye Tucker media frenzy was about. So I kind of wanted to get a little bit of her perspective. So stick around and listen to what Amy has to say. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Stacey.
So our friend Amy, I asked her to come on here and talk about her experience because she was working in the criminal justice system when all of the fight for clemency for Karla Faye was going on. She has a good perspective of, well, I'll let her tell you her perspective. So talk about, I guess, working in the criminal justice system and then working around people that committed violent crimes or terrible crimes.
So, I started working in the Pre-Sentence Investigations Unit at 49 San Jacinto in Harris County in 1995, which, was more of an assessment for people who had issues. And this is whenever there was more rehabilitation services offered. Pre-sentence PSI reports would then be submitted to the judges prior to sentencing. It would give recommendations for the person, on all aspects. And it also gave the judge a detailed history of where they were coming from.
What's a PSI? Sorry.
Our pre-sentence investigation.
Pre-sentence investigation. Sorry, I don't know anything about the criminal justice system.
But they used to do that here in Harris County in Texas to give people an opportunity to present themselves as the person in front of the judge on paper. And I did that stint. That followed into a promotion from within to a courtesy supervision officer. And then when I entered that position, the backlog for probationers having an assigned probation officer for probationers that were moving from out of state and out of county was 6 months behind. And so I started working on that and got it to 2 weeks lag time. So there were some cracks that we tried to fill up. But the whole time that whenever I was working on that particular project, Karla Faye Tucker was all over the news, both in mainstream media and on the religious networks about, her execution that was upcoming.
And her request for stay of execution. Yes. What is your perspective on all the media attention around her?
I think that the attention definitely snowballed into like every area of media back then. My perspective is that she was very good she had a lot of personal power, which a charisma. And I think that a lot of people were enamored and in amazement of that and just very mesmerized by that. And I think that that's what carried her through all her coverage of her case was her personal power in this way that she had that charisma and that energy. And to say on top of that, I found Jesus Christ and I'm a changed person, it's very believable.
Yeah. And when I was talking to you before, you were saying something about how you would just see people that committed these violent crimes get probation.
Yeah. So whenever I came on that project for Harris County for the community supervision desk, 6 months, any type of person if they were a murderer, they were put on probation out of state. They were here in Harris County without a probation officer for 6 months. So that's a long time to be without any type of community supervision. And so my goal was to fill that gap and create, shorten this time period. That's a half a year. And these people, there's a lot of people on probation who have murder records. It just, or manslaughter or it just depends. A lot of times throughout the halls, you'd hear in our units that a lot depended on the judge's mood that day before sentencing. There was a lot of people with scary cases that came across my desk where I would be like, how did they get on probation? This is 2 years, deferred adjudication. Really, and then with photos. So cases I came across where, I'd get what the their probation officer would have in the other counties and other states and parishes. And so it was disturbing.
You were looking at this coverage going, why? Because she did commit a very, very violent crime.
Yes, and it was very beyond a shadow of doubt. There was no room for questioning. So seeing the cases and the people, and then seeing that going on, and then I was like, okay, well, we're obviously seeing a case that she's going to get the extreme arm of justice handed to her. And once that's set in motion, it's pretty much done deal in the state of Texas. You're not going to get out of it. Obviously, she did exude a lot of charisma to have that kind of power over so many people. And like I said, the cases of probationers getting the judge on a good day and getting a lesser sentence than they would normally get based on the day. It's interesting. What if she had encountered one of the judges that were like having a really good day and said, okay, well, we're going to do this. And then you're going to 20 years, 25 years, then you'll be on probation or something, or parole in that case.
So it almost seems like religion kind of clouded, or spirituality or born again clouded over the crimes that she committed. And so when you're looking at it from an on paper point, like this person is dangerous to be out in society. She gave good face and she's saying all the right words and she's saying she's a believer now. That just clouded the judgment of people. And it shouldn't have. It should have been looked at just like it was. She committed a violent crime. Those people need justice. Their families need justice.
Yes. And, this was not like in the state of Texas, there's this crime of passion law. I don't know if you've heard of this. I did see some cases of crimes of passion where they were on probation.
And do you think that's okay?
You can get away if you see your spouse in your bed with another person, and you go off and you commit a violent act against either of them that can fall into the crime of passion. You can basically get away with it.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think that law applies more to men or to women than men? Like, it applies both? It's equal?
The case I saw were both men. There's two cases that I saw there. Men who committed crimes of passion, and it was pretty tough seeing, but I don't know what the law is now at this time. I think it still stands. I don't think it's been changed. But, you have that kind of event happening in your home, in your bed, with your spouse, crime of passion can apply.
But with her, it was fueled by drugs, I believe.
A different type of passion.
Like you look at yourself and you think, I would hope at my worst, I would never have the impulse or the ability to commit that type of crime. And I'll be honest, I don't think most people do. Like most people don't have that.
Most people just walk away or do something else, and say, okay. But yeah, the drugs, the upbringing, obviously this mental health of the individual, just a lot of things, the psyche. I think it just plays a big role in a lot for the choices, the reasons why to do the drugs, to not feel that pain inside. She definitely had a lot of pain to run from and a lot of issues.
But she still did what she did.
She did.
Overall, when they executed her, when W, as I like to call him, didn't give her the stay of execution, you feel like justice was done.
Oh, yes, definitely. I, as a tax-paying citizen, when there is zero shadow of doubt, there's no question, which there was no question. That is definitely very valid. I think it brings justice to the unheard victims. It vindicates them and their life.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing your perspective on that. It's, I don't have any kind of legal experience. So when I get to hear stuff like this, I'm impressed. And I'm like, I didn't know what the PSI, is that what it was? I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, it's no longer, Harris County doesn't do that anymore because they used to do a lot of rehabilitative programs for people who were like soft crime. And then, okay, you go, you do misdemeanor theft. Okay, we're going to do some counseling for you. They actually try to help people at one point in time. And that was Nancy Platt. And Nancy Platt, well, they railroaded her because she was taking money and she was spending money towards the betterment of people, of society. And the powers that be didn't like that.
So they don't really have any good rehabilitative programs now in Texas. It changed.
I think they still have safety, the substance abuse and preventative programs. I think that they still do, but I think it's very, it's so structured. People don't want to stick with it. They can't come and go as they please like they used to. Used to be like, okay, I'm gonna go. It's kind of like a revolving door, and that's why it became so expensive because it was just the intention was very good. It just
Wasn't structured.
it needed some changes done to it. But I know that they do have programs that still exist. They're not as thorough. And I think they rely more on medications now, like methadone clinics and, these different clinics that's just for that one faucet of individual. So, but they did invest a lot on trying to prevent people from getting further involved in their error, their ways.
When did you leave, let's just say, the industry?
Well, I had cancer. I was still also dealing with cancer at that time whenever Karla Faye Tucker was going through all this. It actually was a little bit of escapism on my end as a viewer, going through what I was going through personally. But it was like, this is so crazy. Why are we even giving her airtime? This is just ridiculous. And, whenever I saw her, she went way overboard into a realm of like, it's like I never did anything at all. I thought that was very wrong.
It was very wrong.
She took away from what she did by saying, oh, I'm born again and I'm this great person and I can go help other people going down. No, you can't. No, you need to stay in your lane.
Even if she was never going to get out of prison. She was always going to be in prison. But obviously she had a life in there. She got married.
Yeah, I mean, she had more life than her victim ever had that to do, so I'm glad that George W.
W.
Love him or hate him, it is what it is, and I think he did right on that one.
What I didn't know, the governor, apparently he doesn't have the authority to completely change the sentence. He just gives it time. It's a legal pause, if you will, correct?
I think it was a 30-day pause that she did get.
She did get one before he went ahead and said no?
I think so, yeah. It might have been 2 weeks, but she did get an extension of something before she asked for another pause.
Okay. And then he said no.
Yeah.
He said she was sentenced and we do what the jury said to do, right?
Yeah. Signed and said, no, you got a meeting in that room. If he had granted her clemency, I think that would have set the precedent for more leniency towards those types of crimes. And I think the precedent would not have been good.
People don't think about that, but that is true. Even though you're looking at a case-by-case basis, you still have to consider precedent. And that I do understand because, why would lawyers be quoting precedent all the time in court? And it's just like, was she the one to do that for? Because she came with the media circus and everybody's going to find Jesus in prison if she was granted that clemency.
Yeah, they're like, oh, wait, I'm saved now. Did I get a free pass? Not to discredit her experience or what have you. I'm sure she did have a wake up and a realization, but I do think that she should have stepped away from the limelight because it was not going to help anybody but herself, And I think that she should have just stepped away and said, you know what? Thank you. I've done this and that. I'm going to go over here and read my Bible. And she didn't make it a fiasco. She allowed it to get so big. And I think that a little bit of humbleness may have made it look more sincere.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on and sharing your perspective. I really, really appreciate that.
I enjoyed talking about it. It was definitely one of the most talked about things here in Houston back in that day, and it was very distracting.
Thanks for listening to the Femme Fatal. And as usual, I will go ahead and link to some of the stuff we mentioned in the description.
The Femme Fatal, created and hosted by Stacey Dotson, produced by Mark Williams. Music by Marcia Yingling, Chad Shank, and Greg Loicano.